A woman terrified of water, found floating face down in the sea. A husband with no clear explanation. And a Hollywood night that ended in chilling silence. What really happened aboard the yacht Splendor that night? After 44 years, the truth may finally be surfacing, and it's darker than anyone imagined. She was Hollywood's golden girl. Natalie Wood, a child star turned screen legend. Elegant, magnetic, adored by millions. But on a cold November night in 1981, her body was found in the freezing waters off Catalina Island, floating alone. Dressed in nothing but a flannel nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. That should have been the end of the story, ruled Anne. Accident, tragic, but simple. Except, nothing about that night has ever made sense. The people who were with her on the boat. All stars in their own right. Her husband, actor Robert Wagner. Her co-star, Christopher Walken. The yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. 3 men, 1 dead woman, and 0 clarity. Now, decades later, the case is no longer just about suspicion. It's about evidence. Reopened after 30 years, re-examined with new forensic tools, and riddled with inconsistencies that were once ignored, but now scream for attention. This isn't just a cold case anymore. It's a story cracking open. Born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko in 1938, Natalie's rise to fame wasn't just meteoric, it was manufactured. Her mother, a controlling and deeply superstitious woman, believed a psychic's prophecy that Natalie would die in dark water. So what did she do? She pushed her daughter into stardom while planting the seed of a paralyzing fear. The water would kill her, and Natalie believed it. She spoke of it to friends. She avoided deep water. She was visibly shaken by the ocean. One friend recalled her saying, "I'm afraid of it. Something bad is going to happen in water." Prophetic words. Yet somehow, despite that fear, she found herself spending that fateful weekend on a yacht. Natalie married Robert Wagner at 19. Hollywood's dream couple, until they weren't. They divorced 5 years later. But in true movie fashion, they reunited in 1972, remarrying and creating what looked like a fairy tale second act. But behind the red carpet smiles was a marriage plagued by jealousy, volatility, and emotional chaos. By the late 70s, Natalie had stepped away from acting to raise her daughters. But in 1981, she was ready for a comeback, co-starring with Christopher Walken in Brainstorm. That film would become her last. The setting, a luxury yacht called Splendor. The location, just off Catalina Island. The passengers, Natalie, Wagner, Walken, and Captain Davern. The mood, festive. At first, but wine flowed freely that night. And with it came tension. Whispers suggest Wagner grew jealous of Natalie's closeness with Walken during filming. Whether or not anything romantic happened, no one knows. But Wagner's unease grew into anger. According to Captain Davern, a heated argument exploded between Wagner and Walken. Voices were raised. A wine bottle was shattered. Natalie left the cabin. Then silence. She was gone. Wagner later claimed Natalie had taken the dinghy alone to shore. But that never made sense. The dinghy was found near the yacht, unused. No paddles missing. No ropes untied. Natalie, who feared water so deeply, supposedly got into a boat alone in the dead of night, without telling anyone. Even stranger, Wagner waited nearly 4 hours to call for help. Why? By the time the Coast Guard arrived, Natalie was dead, found. Just a mile from the boat, the autopsy ruled it an accident. But there were bruises on her body. No signs of forced drowning, but signs of struggle. And every person on board had a different story. Hollywood talks, always. But when Natalie died, it fell silent. Christopher Walken barely spoke of. That night, Captain Davern backed Wagner's story at first. And the entertainment elite. Quiet, too quiet. Why? Some say it was fear. Others say it was loyalty, not to Natalie, but to Wagner. He was still powerful, still working, still protected. Even Davern, the only witness not rich or famous, admitted years later he lied to police, that Wagner told him to keep quiet, that he felt pressured to support the narrative of Natalie's solo escape in the dinghy. But in 2011, Davern broke. He revealed that Wagner had shouted at Natalie during an explosive fight. That when he suggested calling for help, Wagner refused. "Don't do anything," Wagner reportedly said. "We'll wait." His story was always vague. He said he went to bed early, didn't hear anything, didn't know Natalie was gone, but on a 60-foot yacht. With shouting, a fight, a shattered bottle, nothing. The stories didn't match in 1981. They didn't match in 2000. And by 2018, they had unraveled so far that Robert Wagner was officially declared a person of interest by the LA County Sheriff's Department. Not charged, not convicted, but under a spotlight that only grew darker as the years ticked by. So, why did this case refuse to stay buried? Because none of it added up. Not the bruises on Natalie's face and arms. Not the dinghy that appeared untouched. Not the hours-long delay in calling for help. Not the broken bottle Wagner first denied, then admitted he smashed in anger. And especially not the silence, the eerie, uncomfortable silence from nearly everyone who knew what happened that night. Detectives started asking a question they should have asked decades ago. Was this really an accident or a cover-up? Forensic experts reanalyzed the evidence. Media outlets began digging. Fans, journalists, even cold case investigators reopened the files. And what they found wasn't just chilling. It was damning new statements. Old lies, unexplained bruises. Even the timeline fell apart when re-examined. Wagner had said Natalie was asleep, then missing. But what if she wasn't asleep? Or missing? What if she was trying to escape something? Something or someone? For years, Robert Wagner was seen as the grieving husband, the Hollywood icon clinging to his late wife's memory. But the cracks in that narrative have deepened. He was the last person to see Natalie alive. He smashed the wine bottle. He delayed calling for help. And even when the case was officially reopened in 2018, he refused to speak to investigators. Think about that. A man who claimed to love his wife wouldn't talk to the police trying to uncover what really happened to her. Friends of Natalie would later say what Hollywood tabloids never dared to report, that their relationship wasn't a love story. It was volatile, controlling, jealous. That Wagner's charm in public masked a deep insecurity in private. Captain Dennis Davern eventually broke his silence, claiming Wagner was furious over Natalie's closeness with Walken, that he screamed at her, accused her of embarrassing him, and then nothing, just silence, until Natalie was gone. Wagner's account. It never made sense. He told police Natalie broke the wine bottle by accident. Years later, he admitted he did it himself. In a rage, that detail alone reveals something critical. He wasn't telling the full truth from day one. More troubling was the 4-hour delay in reporting Natalie's disappearance. Why? What was Wagner doing during that time? Investigators now believe he was building a narrative, cleaning up chaos, and possibly buying time. When Natalie's body was pulled from the water, the autopsy raised more questions than answers. Yes, there was alcohol in her system, but not enough to cause a fatal fall. Yes, she wore a coat, but why would someone heading to bed wear a heavy down jacket? Yes, she had bruises, but they weren't random. They were on her wrists, on her face, her legs, and they suggested restraint. Struggle Force in 2012, the coroner quietly changed her cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. It was vague, but it was an admission. The original story no longer held water. Just when the case seemed doomed to speculation, a new voice emerged. A man, now in his 60s, who had been just a teenager in 1981 on a nearby fishing boat anchored near Splendour. He told author-investigator Marty Raleigh that he heard a woman screaming. He heard an argument, but back then, no one believed Natalie had been murdered. He stayed quiet, thinking it was just a tragic accident. Now, his story aligns perfectly with the revised timeline. Other witnesses dismissed decades ago. They're saying the same thing, and all of it points in one direction. Natalie didn't fall. She was pushed, and she screamed, but no one came. Forensic pathologists revisited the photos, analyzed the bruising, reviewed the positions, tested the jacket. Their conclusion: Natalie was alive and fighting when she hit the water. She didn't drown in silence. She drowned in terror. The emerging version of events looks like this: an argument, a shattered bottle, a woman terrified of water trying to flee, a confrontation, a silence that lasted hours, a rescue that came too late, all while Wagner, the man who claimed to love her, stayed silent. And he's still silent. No interviews, no cooperation, no comment. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department now publicly says this was never just a drunken accident. Detective Ralph Hernandez stated in 2020, the bruising on her body is not consistent with a simple fall. It looks like she was assaulted. Wagner still denies everything, still walks free. But the mountain of evidence, the bruises, the witnesses, the revised autopsy, the inconsistencies all tell a different story. One not of love, but of control. Not of tragedy, but of concealment. She was terrified of water her entire life. And somehow on a yacht, surrounded by people, she died in it. Alone. Bruised, calling for help. And now, decades later, the question is no longer, did Robert Wagner know what happened? It's, how much did he choose to hide? What do you think happened to Natalie Wood that night? Was justice served? Or buried beneath Hollywood's golden silence? Drop your theory in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you believe this story deserves to stay in the spotlight.